1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... Hello, you goofy goober. You gratuitous grapefruit. How are you doing today?
Good, though I have to have been transferred to a bunker in Antarctica.
You should have gone to the North Pole.
Yeah, but the
Or to
North
the
Pole
Arctic.
has Santa Claus. And
Yeah. North Pole is the Arctic.
Yeah, but the North Pole has Santa Claus and he has it out for me.
Only you. Of all the
Yeah,
people...
but I'm the one in the bunker.
If it's Santa Claus after you, whatever you did, you deserve it.
He gets way too good of a rap. He's actually an international assassin. Where do you think coming down chimneys?
He is also
that was
supplying
his MO.
huge amounts of coal to the world.
Yeah, which is supplying global warming. He's one of the 9 apocalypses. Or I should say, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Yes. I saw with my own eyes.
Whatever you say.
Regardless, on to the synopsis before we get taken out by a...
Today, we are reviewing a book titled A Tale of Stars and Shadow by Lisa Cassidy. A most tenebrous book full with radiant balls of suns. Though not every star is a sun.
That's complete fabrication, that is. It's really about stars taking over the planet and using their dark magic to do so.
Dark magic.
That's actually also entirely fabrication, but I didn't know if he was going to call me out on it, so I do it for you.
I let people dig their own graves.
Well, you were letting us dig our own graves there. False advertising is a great
I waggle
difficulty.
my hand in your general direction dismissively and tell you with assertive dominance to read the synopsis, you goon.
I'm really not getting paid enough to be called a goon. A broken warrior searching for redemption, a masked criminal who hides in the shadows, a rising darkness that threatens to consume them both. A born warrior, Talon Dainan is the finest fighter of her generation, but after her partner's tragic death, Talon is left broken, racked with guilt, and unable to regain the confidence she once had. An unexpected mission to the mysterious kingdom of Mithranar, home of the magical winged folk, is the last thing she's prepared for. Struggling to hide her self-doubt, she must contend with the dangerous political games of Mithranar while secretly hunting a dangerous criminal. Can she rediscover her identity as a warrior before it's too late? The Shadowhawk lives a life in the shadows. Desperate to help the oppressed folk of Mithranar, he haunts the streets of Dock City. The rival of a foreign warrior threatens to place his life in even greater danger from those that hunt him. As he comes closer than he ever has to being unmasked, he must make a difficult choice: bury himself deeper in the shadows and survive, or take a greater risk than he has ever before to bring real hope to the humans of Mithranar.
Dun, dun, dun.
There's another paragraph mentioning a great evil darkness that's encroaching, but that's kind of boring. It doesn't really actually take place in the story.
I never read the synopsis. Is there really a paragraph?
The paragraph, meanwhile, unbeknownst to either, a dangerous foe stalks the dark corners of the Dock City. One that answers to a single purpose: vengeance. Ooh. But it really does not come up into the story.
Yeah, it really didn't.
Basically, that plot arc is a bunch of bodies dropping here and there.
So no one knows what's happening. It's all a mystery.
This vengeance-seeking demon ghost doesn't even know himself.
A very shadowy mystery that only the stars know about.
I quite like the book.
So did I. Talon, her whole plot arc of being more or less suffering PTSD was quite an enjoyable narrative for me. It was occasionally a little heavy-handed, or...
about half the time, in my opinion, was very heavy-handed because the author, and this is probably like my least favorite part of the book, which is not saying too much, but the author, rather than showing or having interactions wherein this PTSD could come about, the first half of the book was Talon pretty much telling herself that I have PTSD, or remarking to herself that she has PTSD, and it's just...
It's a little inorganic and not as entertaining or as...
But by the plot arc still lands exceedingly well, because there's just these scenes where it's actually allowed to really just be and affect her life in not insubstantial ways.
Yeah. And actually, a plot point in the book that, and I'm talking about it even though it's completely irrelevant, it's just a plot point that I quite enjoyed because it shows capability, is the first chapter starts off with a Shadowhawk chapter as he's stealing stuff from a ship, and he's looking at the winged people guards, and he references to them being terrible. And then the book spends the next 70% of the book validating that yes, these people, these oppressors, are terrible guards.
But not terrible as in evil. They are incompetent.
And that was just I found that low-key very enjoyable.
And this actually pays dividends in a scene that we're going to touch on later, or at least I fully intend to touch on later.
I've already forgotten it.
Oh, well, that's all right.
What book are we talking about again?
Listen,
Kagan's Rising.
If you can't remember,
Rebellion of Spark.
This should get very exciting very quickly. Just start making things up, and hopefully one or two will be correct.
Okay. I need one more. What's another book we read? A part of the Mark Lawrence's blog off.
You could do...
Oh yeah, Fool's Gold. Beggar's Fools.
You just said two completely different titles.
Oh no, you see what I was doing is I was taking words from various books that...
Oh, you were mixing and matching.
Yeah.
Very clever.
I actually thought you could cut on to that, but as usual...
Not actively, like low-key maybe.
You actively depressed me.
Okay then.
Anyway, you had a scene you wished to discuss.
I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to get around to it because it was the... Alright, whatever, regardless. So, this eventually comes to really nice fruition because, as the synopsis says, Talon's main purpose in coming to her, to Mithranar, is to actually find the Shadowhawk. But she's not there to kill him or capture him or anything like that. She's just there to dig up information on him, and she doesn't know why. And so you have the Shadowhawk, and the Shadowhawk is this sneaky through the city, steal some
goods to give to the... Because we should probably give this a little bit. Mithranar is broken into two races, and the synopsis touches on it. You have the winged people, which are just
arrogant,
non-divine angelic beings. They're winged people. They live on top of a mountain. There's a few thousand of them, and they have some elements of magic, but on the whole are basically humans with wings. And then you have the human civilization living below them on the ground. And the winged people are mostly oppressive from a context of they get the best of everything
as lesser creatures,
and they make sure they get the best of everything, and the humans are left with the dregs. But they are not oppressive in the context they go out and they just murder whole droves of them.
Right, it's very much a class system.
Yeah. Now you may continue.
So, and you have the Shadowhawk, and he is doing his darndest to feed the poor, oppressed, and lonely soul of the humans. He is quite the noble figure. But at the same time, he has a ridiculously easy job of it because he's a character in the know. And as we stated before, the winged police are absolutely incompetent, and the human ground forces are like, hey, he's our guy, we're not going to hunt him down. And so you have Talon, and basically a week after her arrival, she's like, oh, okay, she gets one little tidbit of information and goes, finds him instantaneously. It's like, really enjoyable.
Both because it's a culture shock for him, because he has been surrounded by incompetence for so long, but it's also really nice because it validates her as an elite covert operative. She's
not a covert operative. She's not a spy. She is just
specialist.
Okay, we actually have to take a detour here. She is a specialist, right? And so, combat specialist. She hunts down soldier, hunts down bandits, and
Soldier, sailor, tinker, spy.
Sure, why not? And so the pretense under which she was sent to Mithranor is that she is there to train up a bodyguard for one of the 3 Mithranor princes.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the cover story. The other, her true mission is to dig up info and dirt on the Shadowhawk.
Yeah.
So she comes here, weekend, and she's already found the guy, which Mithranor has been trying to locate and murder for about like 5 years now.
Yeah.
And so this was a thoroughly enjoyable scene because he walks into his apartment, top secret apartment, and there she is lounging in one of his chairs, having rooted through the entire thing, collected all of his weapons, and said, "I got you pegged." And he is just like, oh my god. He is just absolutely shocked and horrified and just completely... It's really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And he realizes that the game just got a whole lot more serious, and he would be totally dead if she actually wanted him done, because he had no recourse here. But her job is only to find information on the guy, so she lets him go.
Yeah.
Now, this would kind of make him look incompetent, but this is the meeting actually, this initial interaction actually extends beyond that in the way that...
Now we're starting to get a little bit spoiler-ish. Because we don't want, that's about halfway through the book where all these events happens. We don't want to tell them all the cool stuff. Just enough of the cool stuff to get them interested.
All right, so he has a redemptive moment later on.
Let's leave the book, he is decently competent throughout the story. Nowhere
just
near
coddled by the absolute incompetence around him.
Yeah. But the Shadowhawk Talon is more of an overarching grand / sub-narrative. It is simultaneously both of those, which is mildly impressive because the main story focuses on Talon and the group of people she is entrusted with to try and train them into a suitable guard for the prince. And it's her relationship with this cohort that's the meat of the story. And the cohort are all people pulled from crime cells and... crime cells, they're pulled
criminals.
From prisons.
They're prisons.
And they have varying... They all have their issues that she resolves, and that part of the story is fairly well handled, not as good as some of the ones that we've seen.
There's a few parts I find just a little bit squeaky.
Yeah, a few parts that are a little bit squeaky, and a few...
Okay, so there's like 4 characters in it. 2 of them, she kind of gets a little bit too much help from the author, we'll say. But the other 2, right, the actual difficult ones, she lands really well, right? And you see the relationship building between this incredibly antagonistic thief who hates the winged people, and so here he is forced, either you help become a bodyguard for this winged prince, or you get executed. So he has a lot of anger and issues, and it's really enjoyable watching his progression from somebody who really just does not trust her or anybody to somebody who literally would lay down his life for her and tries to do so.
So yeah, the progression of the relationships, for the most part, is decent, but what I really enjoyed about that entire mechanic was the narrative interactions. Because one of the members is a disgraced wing person. I can't remember his name. Sadly.
Not really disgraced, he's
disgraced in that he's...
bit out of favor.
That's what disgraced...
No, disgraced means, you killed this man! You're evil now! Ah! Disgraced, for me, connotates a somewhat more significant sin.
He's on the outs with all the families for some much reason, but he has all their inbuilt racism and elitism, and so he provides a really enjoyable dynamic to the series as he also progresses as a character to view humans not only as not inferior but as equals and friends. And so I really enjoyed having him in the story, but it's not just he evolves as a person, there's narrative advances and progressions that play with him as a winged person that are really enjoyable as the story goes around. And it even takes it farther because these people are criminals and they're humans and they all have well-deserved aggression for the winged people rulers.
Well, apart from the winged person who is among the crew.
Yes, but the story plays with that, and that's an interactive element where there's moments in the story where they have to put themselves on the line for the winged person they're protecting, despite the fact that they hold massive disdain for him. But they do it for all the reasons and etc. And I really enjoyed that narrative and personal interaction in the story that these characters created.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice because it's even juxtaposed against events that endanger humans that they desperately want to aid, but superficially can't without her permission. And so the narrative conflicts in the story are really well structured and handled, and
they're not insignificant or just kind of simple ones. At one point, there's a natural disaster, and these people are torn between helping fend off the natural disaster or protecting a winged prince who they don't like, doesn't like them, and doesn't really feel like he needs them. And but they can't because they can't initially go down to help with the flood because it's their duty to protect the prince.
Mm-hmm. Something that another element of the book is there's a twist element to the book.
Yeah.
And the author tries to hide and to conceal it, but ultimately just it doesn't work. And
the end twist is very obvious, like ridiculously obvious.
I wouldn't say ridiculously obvious because it's...
I was actually going to touch on this myself though, because it's like I feel like this is the twist. I spent the entire book feeling like this is the twist, and it's the question is who is the Shadowhawk?
Yes.
But remember, Talon and the Shadowhawk come face to face. So it's like, wait, is he actually who we think he is? And so the question became less of who the Shadowhawk is and how is the author going to work this twist into the story? Because they met face to face. It's like there should be no mystery here.
Mm-hmm. And so it's not really a negative point for me because the author does try and make some admirable efforts to conceal and obfuscate the scenario.
But at the same time, she also teases the truth really well. Like,
I never really noticed her quote unquote actively teasing the truth.
Really dangerous spoiler territory.
I know, but you're
I
the one
can't
who
tell you what the teasing was.
So I'm just going to let you stew there and suffer and then gloat.
This is intolerable. I'm just slowly dying inside.
I'll save money on the Undertaker fees. I'm not going to move you from the chair.
Yeah, well, let me say, I'll be buried in comfort.
Now, the other light criticism I could lend against the book is that it does tread water a lot. Or not necessarily a lot, but there are large sections of the book where what's happening isn't important or meaningful besides as a light curtain for character interactions that aren't in of themselves immensely meaningful. Because some of it feels like the author needed time for the character progression to happen.
Right.
But she didn't have the events to fill that time.
I don't, just lightly thinking over, I only see, think of one major event that...
It's both the major event, but sort of just a prevalence throughout the book of just a lot of scenes where what's happening isn't... Intense is not quite the correct word, because there are a lot of scenes where it is intense, but where what's happening isn't meaningful to the characters.
Maybe, but all I can think of is
And like the big one is the game scene for me.
Yeah.
There was a huge undercurrent plot point that had nothing to do with anything really. Like
that being said, so the results from the game I feel are going to have ramifications in book 2. And ramifications is the wrong word. It's ripples. It's going to cause significant ripples for book 2.
Yeah, but it was still just, and it wasn't necessarily unenjoyable in of its moment, but it felt narratively hollow.
So for a little context, halfway through the book, an evil prince, right? Not evil, just
evil prince, cackling mildly in the shadows while he's looked upon by the stars,
challenges our heroes to a incredibly lopsided game, his best against her best. And so this is, I actually can't even tell them how it ends because that's
yeah. And it doesn't matter how it ends, really. It's just...
Okay. And so the game, on the surface level, what the game achieves is that it shows the culmination of their training and her crew working together despite their differences. Except they literally just finished a scene of them working together and actually putting her training to use, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
So at the surface, that level, it's kind of unnecessary. So now that we've ragged on it for a little bit, something that might just be me having some slight mental trouble in the book is...
You always have mental troubles.
Yes, as you couldn't just tell from my stuttering attempt through a sentence. There was actually a very significant mystery running through the book, and it was, why was she summoned here to create a protection squad for the prince who really does not want it? And there's like various powers who could have instigated the whole summoning. None of them will admit to it. And so it's like, as the reader, I was like, wait, who is actually behind calling her over here? Right? And it was like, this is actually really enjoy this mystery because it did not simply open itself up to me, right? And somebody who might potentially have been the person who summoned her was kind of offered trials and tribulations to her. Another person who was like, you did seem very nice and not like it. So I was like, I actually really enjoy this, and this undercurrent narrative. Why is she here for Mithranor? Why didn't Mithranor call her over here? It was actually really well handled.
Yeah, I would agree.
That gets resolved like really enjoyably.
The complexities of the politicking isn't really the correct term because it's not a huge political book with undercurrents and espionage and subterfuge and nonsense. But yeah, the dynamics of the royal family and of the Mithranor's native winged people and Talon and her crew was really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. I can't think of anything else I desperately feel like mentioning.
Agreed, I can't think of anything. The book takes a little bit to get started.
No, but it's actually far less than many, because it was like, as soon as she starts running around picking up her prisoners, that's for me when the book really...
Yes, agreed. And what I meant by sort of it takes a little while to get started, because the book taking a while to get to the meat of the story isn't a huge issue for me generally.
Mm-hmm.
But this sort of goes back to where the narratively hollow comment I meant. You have...
Basically, he was a little bored in the first eighth of the book.
Bored is a good term for there, but in future scenes where
all the character interactions and the...
I was not bored later in the book for narratively hollow scenes, but I was somewhat at the beginning of the book. It felt like it took too long to basically lay down the story of she having PTSD. It featured too much of her family and friends that had no relation to her or her narrative.
Yeah, it said a little bit too long, arranging her home life and arranging that picture.
And
which was largely just completely unnecessary.
The book could have started with her on the boat to Mithranor, half a chapter backstory,
recalling her meeting with her debriefing meeting,
her traumas, and all kinds of stuff like that. And that was the end of it. Any further insults you wish?
All right.
You said you were done
I know,
talking!
but this is a really enjoyable moment for the book, right? And so
I will rate it.
So
your opinion, not the book.
Fine. Talon is actually noble, right? She's actually part of the ruling family, right? And this ruling family has a beautiful mysticism. It's really under key, right? And so what it is I'm gonna blow it out of proportion, but it's like two complete strangers meet on the street. One is from this family. He points to the guy and says, "Hey, you're my brother," right? There's this instinctive knowledge of the other members of their family, instinctive connection, urge to protect and to be with them, and it's really enjoyable. So it's like her actually being away from her family, while it never comes into major play, is a minor burden for her, and it's one of the reasons she was sent over here, because she's actually yet another. It's like she actually has three reasons for being sent to Mithranor. One is to protect a secret member of their family who is actually the prince of the winged folk.
I do remember enjoying the mechanics of her being royal, not even just from recognizing other royals, but her being a royal was well used throughout the course of the book. Because it's not...
Without it ever actually being used, she never whipped out a tiara and go, "I am queen, do what I say," or "Haha, I got political power."
So her cohort doesn't realize it. Doesn't realize she's noble blood, if I remember correctly.
No, her crew does not realize
and so they talk about the noble blood and ask questions about it. And so it's just...
one of the many enjoyable facets of the story. But what really good about this is that there's never a moment where the shoe doesn't drop. She never reveals to her crew that she is actually royalty. Right, which what I really enjoyed, because it's...
We forgot to do a new hat. How could you betray me?
Mikey is so depressed.
I can't even send you to...
Yeah, we're all tied up.
You have betrayed me again! That's twice in like 10 seconds.
And so she comes, and so you have this moment, right? And she comes to Mithranor expecting this instant acknowledgement and just realization with the prince they're supposed to protect, and he just pretty much flips her the bird and walks out. So she spends a great deal of the story wondering how this prince can be a member of her extended family, because there is no...
I have to go find the other hat. You just keep talking for the
late.
next... I refuse.
Can't we just skip to it?
Just talk about salt.
So salt, I feel, is an exceedingly overused condiment and should be excommunicated instantaneously. I feel it should be considered a main dish and force-fed to prisoners as a way to truly show them the depth of their criminality. And
I agree.
That was just so helpful.
I am a burden of insight.
That you are. But, of course, this leaves a dramatic and gaping hole in the world of spices. So, to replace that, I think we need...
gunpowder.
Okay, gunpowder is great. We should start adding gunpowder. And maybe nitroglycerin, just to give that little spark our meals need. It would primarily be used in probably spicy foods, because that's just thematically appropriate to me.
And soaps.
Soaps might be a little bit dangerous.
You missed the reference.
I did? What is the reference?
The second Zorro movie, they turned nitroglycerin into soap.
Oh. I'm not entirely sure that works, because I don't think Zorro movies are a cult classic. So anyway, gunpowder replaces salt. And we're back.
We're back. We have the nice umbrella hat today. And with that, we will end our show. Thank you for viewing. What would you rate the tale of Stars and Shadow, a most shadowy and starless individual?
4 stars.
I would have given that as well. So, toodaloo, au revoir, goodbye, buy our hats, they're free.
Yes, but the mailing is about $60. But it's worldwide.
Wherever you have paper and a printer. Goodbye.